One of the things I did to sort of try to process the rejection I just went through was to go and contact some of my friends to try to procure a bit of comfort, which I think is a very natural thing to do in the aftermath of a rejection or a breakup or anything of that nature. Really, any unpleasant life event, I think it's a good idea to go and talk to your friends about it. Admittedly, I didn't reveal all of the details. I just said that I'd had a bad 2 days and I could use a little bit of comfort. And, my friends came through for me, of course. And it dawned on me that I had to make the decision to not tell the mutual friends I had with the guy who rejected me that, like, I can't tell them that it was he who rejected me or anything. I can't tell them anything because that might impact the way that they perceive the relationship. And if they're petty enough, it might cause them to shame me. And you know, as I continued to think, and worst of all might be if people felt compelled um to hide the relationship because I publicly expressed grief over being rejected. In what's the word for it? Like that this woman was chosen over me. And it dawned on me that in the ways that it resembles the situation I went through last year, I grieved that situation extremely publicly. Like I was very, very vocal and visual and verbal in many different, parts of social media about that particular situation and very public about how hurt I was. And I publicly stated that I didn't want anybody to blame the guy from last year. In more than one places, I tried to state that I'd prefer if people offered him empathy rather than judgment, because it's true. I think that there is too much guilt that people put on people who reject other people. I think that it should be okay to reject people because in a world where you can't reject anybody, you essentially have to just accept whatever partner comes to you first, and you don't get any you know what I mean? You have no choice. That's horrible. Like, who would want to live in such a world? So, no, rejection is sometimes vital and necessary for people to, be able to function normally. And so I did not want people to blame him for the simple fact of having rejected me. However, there is a lot of other things I implied, like that he was not honest in his rejection of me, or that he may have even deliberately constructed the situation as a cruel prank, or you know, there was a lot of things I said, and more recently I had seen evidence that they were deliberately conducting their relationship secretively and privately, and at the time that I first saw this evidence, um, because if I'm honest, when I was trying to make sure that I was over the guy, I did deliberately look for evidence that they were still together as a way of testing myself. If I could observe the evidence without freaking out or feeling sick, I would know that I was over him. And you know, I what surprised me was that suddenly I didn't find any evidence. And I thought to myself, why would that be the case? Like when previously there'd been ample evidence that they were a couple. Without them directly saying it, just heavily implying it. And it occurred to me then that the reason he might never have been honest with me, the reason he may have straight up lied about this woman is because he he did not want to risk her receiving any kind of social media or public backlash for this situation. And this was a thought that had never occurred to me before because in the past I was so materialistic and negative in my thinking that I just always assumed that people would side against me and side with them because they were apparently the victors. And every time anybody had ever, I had talked to anyone about it, I did it in the assumption that he had never, like, that nobody knew what was going on. And I only later found out that he had actually told people that he went on a date with me. And I only later found out that his roommate was aware of what was happening. And it just it made me realize that, of course, he couldn't publicly announce the relationship because if he did, it would have you know what I mean? It would have created a lot of negative drama because it would have publicly proven that he was not only the one who rejected me, not only the one who had kind of led me along when he was already involved with a woman, but also that he it would have publicly demonized him even further than the things I had already said. And you know, I guess in this video I want to be repentant and, make a kind of public statement where if there is somebody who knows about what happened and is watching this, and I'd like you to not persecute them. If that is what you have in mind, if you are siding with me against them, I don't want there to really be sides. If anything, the main thing that cut me up about the situation was that feeling that people were taking sides. That sensation that his friends were all looking down on me, and that, there would be these unpleasant altercations in the future if I did ever encounter these people. And I don't want people to feel that kind of pressure. I'd much rather everybody just got along peacefully. And, in an ideal world, I feel like people should be able to reject each other without there being this kind of oppressive shame about the concept, um, because it shouldn't be shameful. It's just a natural part of how social dynamics work sometimes. And I think it's preferential to be able to reject people when you need to, rather than to be stuck, in relationships that aren't working for you, or aren't right for you, against your will. Worst of all, against your will. Like that's the worst thing. You know If I stop and think about why I so long felt the need to throw accusations at this guy and to demonize him, it was that I was trying so hard to get over him, and I had this false sense of victimhood where I was living with this impression that he had, by doing what he had done, he had persuaded all of these people to look down on me and to think less of me, and that, he was intentionally publicly shaming me. And I'm sort of realizing that no, if I really believe breakups are a natural part of life, then, you know, this shouldn't matter. You know what I mean? It should be okay. It should be okay. Um, as I say this, I feel really weird because I'm sort of worried about what it'll look like. But I like, regardless of what happened to me, I don't like the idea that anyone would have to hide their relationships or pretend not to be a couple just because they're worried about, some sort of backlash. And I think for the careers they have, they necessarily need to worry about that because, you know, they are going to, like, if they're going to be artists, they're going to count on having fans and public support, and they are going to be in the public eye. And while I do have, you know, a bit of sadness and anger inside me about how things went, um, you know, I don't. Yeah, it's sort of impractical for people to feel pressured to forever hide their relationships. Um, if that is indeed what is happening. And yeah, I guess that's my thought on it. I mean, that isn't to say that I'm not going to go on to have more feelings of being persecuted in the future, or to feel falsely victimized by these situations. Like, but that's a statement about my own emotional state. That shouldn't be a statement about sociology. I'm not a victim. I have my own life away from what happened to me, and it hasn't diminished my humanity or my worth. And those, so long as I am able to exist as part of society, as a positive force, I don't think that anyone can really take anything from me. For me, that's, the meaning of my life comes from God. The sense of worth I have comes from God. It doesn't come from a man, and it shouldn't come from a man because, people are imperfect, and, that's the thing. The fundamental requirement of monogamy is that at a certain point, everybody has to just pick one person if monogamy is what you're going to do. So of course, it's inevitably the case. Like, I've realized this now, that if you are potentially meeting multiple people who you find potentially attractive, there is going to be this situation where you'll gradually get to know them, and you might intentionally or not be showing interest in them, but you don't, you know what I mean? You don't find out whether or not you want to be with one in particular until fairly late into the piece, maybe. And by that point, you might have unintentionally led a number of people along. And, you know, having done the thing now of starting, I've got the experience now to see that for myself, and I'm starting to have more understanding of how this all might have happened, even though there are still a few things about it all that seem a bit fishy to me. Uh, but yeah, that my point is, please don't blame people. Please, when things like this happen, don't blame yourself, don't blame others. Just I think just try to roll with the punches, and try to accept that it is part of life, and that it doesn't have to decide who you are. It's only a moment in time, and it'll come and it'll go, just like anything else in life.